Number one is don't be insecure because how beautiful your skin is. It's not your fault that society hasn't recognized and caught up to your beauty, right? It's just that you're something beyond what society can even envision. And that's the problem that we're having here. So when we are left out in the beauty market, when we were left out, when you think about makeup products, skin tones, things, lotions, all those things, when we are left out, that's because society hasn't caught up. But that doesn't lessen who we are. Dark-skinned people have always been beautiful. We've always existed in this space. And there are people using us for campaigns and putting us at the forefront and profiting off beauty that we don't even know that we have. And so really loving ourselves and knowing that no matter what society says about who we are, that we must love ourselves and know who we are and know the beauty and the power that we possess as well.
Welcome back to another inspiring episode of the Woman Up podcast, where we shine a spotlight on exceptional women who are blazing trails and making their voices heard. Today, we are thrilled to have a truly remarkable guest with us, Deirdre Roberson, a chemist turned fashion designer who is redefining beauty standards with her innovative fashion brand, EUMELANIN. Deirdre, welcome to the Woman Up podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Natasha.
Absolutely. For people who do not know you, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes. So my name is Deirdre Roberson. I am a chemist as well as a designer, and I founded the brand EUMELANIN, which is named after the specific type of melanin that makes our skin and hair black and brown.
I love that. Could you share with us what initially drew you to chemistry and how you transitioned from being a scientist to launching a fashion brand?
Yeah, so growing up, I thought I was going to be a doctor. You know how as kids, we are told our certain careers, doctor, lawyer, something that's important that your family's going to look up to and you're going to do better for them, right? But the interesting thing, at 12, my grandmother taught me how to sew. So I started learning how to sew and being very creative at a young age. But, always was like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. But I did it as a hobby. I never fully looked at it as a career. But when I got to high school, I went to a high school called Cass Tech in Detroit, Michigan, and we got to pick majors, right? So I picked chem bio and found out I was extremely good at chemistry. I didn't have to study for it. I was acing the classes. I was able to take some advanced classes before I even got to college. And I just fell in love with chemistry as well. So when I went to school, I majored in pre-med, but I did chem as my major and bio as my minor. And again, I excelled. Chemistry came easy to me. And so I was looking at ways to make this in a career. And chemistry also has its artistic components too. I used to love drawing the structures for the reactions and different things like that. And then I started working in industry and different things like that. But it's always been this creative side that I wanted to come out. So I've been working on different creative ideas. And in 2018, I got the idea why don't I just merge my two worlds? And I think that's kind of how life works, right? We look at all the skills we have, and then we see how we can make those work together. And so when I came up with the idea to launch a fashion brand, I wanted it to be very intentional. The crazy thing is I was like, EUMELANIN, I had found out this thing about what EUMELANIN actually is. And I didn't learn it in school, having both a bachelor's and master in chemistry. And I'm like, why didn't nobody teach me about this? Then I started looking it up, Natasha. The domain.com was free. There never existed a trademark for it. And I was like, oh, you're on to something. So I immediately snatched up the domain, started snatching up trademarks. And it's really cool because I am the only person that ever put in a trademark request for the word EUMELANIN, right? And so after that, it's just like, how do I make it intentional? How does I use this to uplift my community? And how do I create something that we need as well in the market? And that's why I wanted to talk about my experience with colorism. That's why we're very intentional about our color palette. That dark chocolate is the focal point in everything we do. And so that really just started to grow the brand. It started to build its foundations, and we kind of continue to grow from there.
I'm loving that. I mean, combating colorism, which is a topic or a challenge that we both face from our early, when we came into this world, being Black women. What was the pivotal moment that inspired you to use that fashion as a tool to fight against colorism? And how do you weave this mission into the fabric of your brand?
Yeah. So when I decided to create a brand, I don't think I fully knew how to do it, but I knew I had something to say. And it was something I had been speaking to. And I feel like people weren't listening or people weren't saying that it really existed. And I was just like, this is something that I've been trying to say. So why not? How do I do it more creatively? How do I make people kind of like listen and get them on board? Right. And sometimes it's not always like, hey, hammering it down. But how do you weave that into a story of something and create intention behind it? And then loving fashion being one of the most influential industries in the world, right? I think, using that as the avenue to which I move the messaging just made sense. And then thinking about, the beautiful skin tones and how that can actually show up really well in fashion, right? So I'm talking about colorism, these deep, dark hues of chocolate. I really wanted to bring that out. So it was just me like, trying to be honest to who I am, right? I wanted to create a product, but I didn't want to just create any product, and it had to have story and meaning behind it. Mm-hmm. So when all these ideas kind of just merged, it was like a full-on rush. And I was like, oh, this is it, And like, that's what led me like down the path. Like, it has to be inspirational. It has to be intentional. How can I be impactful to Black people and also create a product that honors who we are?
I'm loving that. It's super clever. You said twice or three times, if I recall, if my memory is good, the deep dark chocolate, referring to the melanin. Is there a story behind it that makes it so vibrating, that vibrates a lot in you, that the deep dark chocolate aspect of the melanin?
For sure, because couple things are happening with our darker skin tones, right? One, we can talk about, preferences and your relationships and stuff. That's just one thing, right? But then you also have to talk about how society looks at people and the policing of darker skinned people. And like, so I was even going deeper and doing research, and how 30 darker skinned people, first, all Black people are policed about 30% chance. Darker skinned Black people have a 66% increase of being over-policed, stopped by the police, put into prison, falsely accused, walking up the street, people think you're a threat. And it's just like, how can I think about making our skin tone just the beauty that it is, bring that out, bring that story out, it's so many negative things out here in society about darker skinned people, about Black people. So how do I bring that to the forefront of what we're talking about? But also, maybe I'm not saying it. Maybe I'm putting it out creatively. Maybe you're now seeing these darker skin tones and these positive lights and these positive fabrics and these positive positions walking down runways. And so, you have to change the fact that when I was even younger, nobody liked the brown crayon. Like, it starts so early.
It's so true.
I think about that and I was like, wow, like nobody wanted to color with the brown crayon. That was the color of my skin. So, I was like, how do we change that from, how we see color? And so, and even growing up as a dark skinned girl, I heard all the time, like, oh, you're pretty for a dark skinned girl, or you're these things will also, affect you as a young woman coming into the world. Now that I'm older, it doesn't bother me, because it's like, that's the only compliment you have. But as a young woman, learning yourself and growing up, the dials that you can choose from. I remember experiencing makeup, like now that you have Fenty and Iman blowing up the market. When I was in college, that wasn't a thing. I was looking like a powder face, trying to figure out things that match. So like, now I think it's a really good time to have these conversations, and that it's room and space to have them. But I think we have to be creative and intentional in how we have them.
I'm getting off track a bit of the question that I had for you today, Deirdre, but continue on that same line of the deep dark chocolate. What would you want to say to those other women who are even in the Black community, like in the Black community, that has your skin tone, that has the deep dark chocolate, beautiful complexion? Because you know what, I connect with you with your message. Me being a makeup artist, prior to doing this, dark chocolate, those dark complexion women are very insecure about that. What would be your message today for them?
My message will be, number one is don't be insecure because how beautiful your skin is, it's not your fault that society hasn't recognized and caught up to your beauty, right? It's just that you're something beyond what society can even envision. And that's the problem that we're having here. So when we are left out in the beauty market, when we were left out, when you think about makeup products, skin tones, things, lotions, all those things, when we are left out, that's because society hasn't caught up. But that doesn't lessen who we are. Dark-skinned people have always been beautiful. We've always existed in this space. And there are people using us for campaigns and putting us at the forefront and profiting off beauty that we don't even know that we have. And so really loving ourselves and knowing that no matter what society says about who we are, that we must love ourselves and know who we are and know the beauty and the power that we possess as well.
Thank you so much. It's very inspiring. How do you integrate scientific principles into your fashion designs, and what roles your background as a chemist play in the creative process?
Yeah, so I kind of weaved it throughout. So number one, the name EUMELANIN is the specific type of melanin, right? So starting from there, we're using chemistry as even the principle of our brand. I also like to think about it in the design. So that's why our logo is a hexagonal design, right? The logo of hexagon is actually the most prevalent design actually in the environment. So it's actually also one of the stronger structures. So we play into the beauty of that hexagonal shape. And the chemical structure of melanin actually possesses about 3 hexagons in its design, right? So when we think about, we use melanin as a focal point for design. One, its features, because it's the skin colors, it's the complexions of the skin. We all have melanin, but depending on how darker your skin tone, you may have more melanin. So we actually incorporate that science aspect into the full spectrum of skin tones, right? Because depending on how dark or how light you are, you have melanin, but it's a different potency levels, right? And then when you think about melanin, we think about its physical characteristics and its structural characteristics. So its structural characteristics is, this chemical form, the hexagonal shapes, and how it shows up in design. And so when we think about, one, our logo, but also our earrings and jewelry, we actually use that in a design aspect because it's beautiful to see as well. And it's structural form. And one of our biggest sellers that went viral was our hex bag. We actually designed it in a hexagon. Right? So to pay tribute to, and I actually have one here. So to kind of like how science actually informs our design, even in everything we do with the hexagon. So science is pretty much really an integral part into explaining the story, but it's also an avenue for people to understand melanin, right? We want you to learn and love a little about yourself. Not only is it beautiful, but it's science. It's scientific. This is who you are. It's in your DNA. So that's kind of how we leave it through, and it's a strong driver of what we try to tell when we try to tell the stories of the brand, and how we've uniquely positioned ourselves when you think about being in the fashion market.
Each hex bag is named after a pioneer Black fashion icon and represents different skin tone, like you mentioned earlier. Can you elaborate on how you select these icons and the significance behind each color choice?
Yeah, so after I created EUMELANIN, we had colors. We wanted the color names to be powerful, but we wanted them to be positive. That's kind of where I started off first. I didn't fully move to powerful, even though that's where I wanted to go. So when we initially started off, the colors were like dark chocolate, caramel, butterscotch, just positive names. We wanted to make sure when you think about dark skin, it doesn't always get a positive name. But as I was growing as a designer and what I wanted my messaging to be, I was like, these names need to also be powerful and tell our stories. And so the scientific part of me went into research. It was just I remember I had my team on board. I'm like, I have to rename the colors. And they're like, okay, let's plan to have the colors renamed by a month. And as much as I'm scientific, I'm creative, and I'm like, whoa, it doesn't work like that. You got to give me time to do research. I got to make sure I put meaning behind it. So I was listening to research, reading up on Black fashion designers, reading up just about the history of fashion. And I stumbled on a fashion designer named Highland Booker, listening to a podcast and heard about his story. He was the first Black fashion designer to head a couture house And then he also headed the first couture house that ever existed, which was the Worth Couture House. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. As I kept listening to his story, he was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and graduated from the high school I graduated from. And it blew my mind about the alignment. And I was on crazy. And I was just like, oh, wow. Every design, that was like my light bulb. Every bag, every color now actually needs to take on an identity to honor the stories that haven't been told and to also like make it powerful. So his name was Highland Booker. So one of our bags is now named Highland after him. And so I kind of pick whether I use sometimes the first name or the last name, depending on what sounds more, which sounds more not relatable, but much more sounds more catchy for a bag. So that's how I got the bag name. So we have Highland Booker. So we have the bag color Highland. Then we have Zelda One Valdez. Again, I can't learn stories and people's stories who resonated with me. So we have the bag named Zelda. And Zelda was the one person responsible for dressing Ella Fitzgerald, those slim fit dresses. People were tapping her to design. Even when you think about Playboy Bunny costumes, like she could look at you and tell you exactly your sizes and make a dress for you based off that. And like just has this amazing story. So I'm like, Zelda has to get a name of the colors. And I keep going down the line. Elizabeth Keckley, right? She freed herself and her son out of slavery in 1860 and had her own business with 20 women working for her in DC in 1860s when we, as Black people in America, were still slaves. So even like pulling that power from the stories and telling it, she actually dressed Abraham Lincoln's wife during her time. And then our last one, Willie Smith, he was the first Black designer. He was grossing $25 million a year on his line in 1985 as a Black streetwear designer. So I was like, these stories are inspiring me. Like, how can I continue to honor them and their legacies? Yeah. So that's how we came up with the names of the bags. So it's like, not only is this brand for Black people, but it's telling stories of Black people and how we have shaped the fashion industry to a point that these stories have been left out. And I'm like, how can you make sure someone's story lives on? And it's not just by telling the story or making a movie, but it's making a product that people can carry and understand and hold with them, and like allowing them to kind of live on through that as well.
It's so important because the education part of your brand, like we have there are so many different layers to our story as Black people that we don't know, and you bring another aspect in the fashion world that I was not even aware of that. So I'm loving that. But tell us how this feature been received by your customer, and what impact do you think it has on their experience with your brand?
Yeah. So it was interesting when we released the Hex bag. That was my intro into luxury. So the Hexagon bag is 100% allure leather. I picked the best materials, right? Because if I'm making something based off our skin tones, I wanted to honor it. So I wasn't interested in entering in the affordable luxury market. I'm like, nope, we need a brand that can compete. So I designed the product to compete with luxury bags like Louis Vuitton, like Gucci. Like if you're buying that bag, you're gonna love this one because the quality matches, and I want to be for quality. So that was one of the points. But as a new designer, you don't have the skin in the game to just sit here and ask for a bag for $950. So what I found out is because I was so intentional about the story. When people were like, oh, that's a lie, even though the materials met the standards, when they heard about the stories and how it honored who they were, it almost sells the bag on its own. And it's kind of beautiful to see like how much we appreciate people or a fashion brand taking a step further to design products with us in mind first and foremost. So it's been received very well. And I think it's because the attention that was put behind naming the brand, the materials that were selected, but also like, hey, you're learning more about yourself and people who came before you and how we've been in this industry doing great things. So I just couldn't imagine that it would be such a huge impact. I was hopeful, but to see it actually come to fruition, I was like, oh, wow, like, okay. And it was just really a good alignment with that. So it's been received really well, and people love the stories. They love learning about themselves, but also these amazing Black fashion icons.
Beauty, makeup, fashion industries are very competitive. It's very hard to be in that in that realm, what are some of the biggest challenges you face in merging high fashion with functional design while staying true to yourself and ethical principles?
Yeah. One of them was that price point, right? In order for me to, my bags were made in Detroit for my first run. We're going to continue to make them in the US, but it's factories that I could pop in and see what was going on, right? So it was that's why also the price point is because I can guarantee you that there's no kind of underhand labor happening, no slave labor, no underpayment or anything happening with the production of my bags, right? So that was very intentional. Like, how can I create a brand to empower Black people and have some kind of shady dealings on the back end or how they're made? So that was very important for me to enter into the market. And also material choice, like making sure that they were high quality materials. And so those were definitely barriers because I'm like, man, this is how much it's going to cost, X, Y, and Z. I hope people, can understand that. And it was just like, one, they can, but also it can't be all. That can't be it. So when we pair that with the stories and the history, like it helped with the barriers, but like being very intentional on manufacturing, sometimes it can be a little slower here. So that's still a barrier, but we've been working out the kinks. So I will say it was definitely some barriers with manufacturing and kind of like getting through the idea in an ethical way. Right. I had to meet my standards. And I'm like, I can't stand behind this. Y'all can't have me doing interviews and stuff. And I don't know. Like, I need to know. So it's like, you ain't gonna have me on no interview talking about, we just found out so-and-so and this would happen at your factory. Like, no.
Are you a team leader who feels overlooked despite your capabilities and efforts? Do you experience anxiety before important networking opportunities, struggling to forge meaningful professional relationships? Does the fear of appearing inauthentic or pushy in networking settings hold you back? Introducing the Networking Powerhouse Acceleration Program, a transformative 12-week journey designed exclusively for team leaders like you who want to gain recognition, confidence, and notoriety through masterful networking. We understand the pain of attending countless networking events and still feeling invisible. Our program offers personalized strategies that make you stand out and be remembered, including sessions that will provide you with the tools to approach any networking scenario with confidence, turning anxiety into anticipation. We teach you how to effectively follow up and nurture professional relationships, transforming contacts into valuable allies, eradicate your fears, fear of being ignored. We equip you with the skills to leave memorable impressions that keep you on the radar long after the first meeting. Fear of not fitting in? Learn to navigate diverse professional environments effortlessly, ensuring you always belong. Fear of inauthenticity? Master the art of authentic engagement, allowing your true self to shine through every interaction. Ultimately, become a networking powerhouse. This program isn't just about networking. It's about revolutionizing the way you connect with the world. By the end of 12 weeks, you won't just attend events, you'll command them. You'll not only meet peers, you'll profoundly connect with industry leaders. Transform your network to open doors to opportunities you've only imagined. Join us and turn your networking efforts into a strategic asset that propels you and your career forward. Spots are limited. Secure your place in the Networking Powerhouse Acceleration Program today and start your journey to notoriety and success. Contact us now to reserve your spot and take the first step towards becoming an undeniable force in your industry.
Melanin has been recognized internationally and featured in major commercials. How do you believe this visibility has influenced the conversation around beauty standards and diversity in the fashion industry? And what do you wish to bring as well on your part?
Well, I hope it's showing that, these conversations can be talked about. They can be impactful and that we can actually build brands that celebrate us. Mm-hmm. And it's not saying that the brand is just for us. But my thought when I'm thinking about what products to release and how to build my products are Black women, period. Right. I'm not saying it's not for anybody else, but that's who's in mind when I'm designing that products. And I wanted to show it to build what does it look like to build a company like that? Because sometimes we think that you can't get money that way or you can't, and that's not true. We have crazy buying power around the world. Black women are the top consumers of luxury items. So it was just like, wow. I create a product that measures up to all the luxury items they are buying. There's no shortage of Black women buying Louis Vuitton, Prada, and Gucci, but there is a shortage of high fashion and luxury items that are Black woman owned that can be in that category. And so that's also how I was trying to differentiate myself. I wanted to go right for those that competition, because they're not Black owned, they're not woman owned in the space. So, and what I will hope that, people take away from this is that, we can build luxury brands. A Black woman can own a luxury brand that can grow to be a nationally, internationally known brand. There has not been one Black woman to head a fashion house in the history of fashion. And that's important to talk about. Why is that? When Black women move fashion so much, why are we not at the helms of these companies? Right? Maybe we do need to be at the helm of these companies, but we also need to have brands that exist by us that are able to compete in that market as well.
I'm loving that. This is so powerful. Your message is powerful, and I see how close to your heart it is, and your vision and your mission as well. What future innovations can we expect from EUMELANIN, particularly in terms of new products or initiatives that will continue to push the boundaries of fashion and inclusivity?
Yeah, so we're definitely going to be releasing new products. So we had our big hex bag, and our smallest hex bag has been the most requested from our clients. So I have been in production with that, and we'll be dropping this fall. And it's still going to have those powerful names. But as we even think about expanding our color palette, you're going to see new stories of fashion pioneers being told. Like, I got a book full of them. I'm waiting to unveil it. And I have products in mind for each of them. So once I went down this road, it's so many Black people went into what fashion is today, and we don't know. I can't wait to start telling these stories and how, we craft these stories around our items, but also looking forward to doing partnerships with other companies to unveil stories of how Black people have helped pioneer industry. So we're looking about how can we collaborate with brands and partnerships. And also, I want to get to the point. So we have the large hex bag, and we're going to be dropping the smaller one. But what does it look like that you can shop from wallet to bag to purse and multiple options? But it does take time to build out your product line like that. So I am going slow because I don't want to put myself in any situation where I have to shut down my company. Right now, my company, if, I pay for production, and it's nobody's like, hey, we need our money back. And so I think you've been seeing a lot of fashion brands struggling because when you have to answer to investors, one, about your mission and why you're creating can change, but also you have to make sometimes desperate decisions to make sure that you cover the money that they gave you. So I'm okay with going slow and slowly releasing these products just so I can continue to build on the intention of what I really want the brand to be. So
you were great at science when you were younger. What advice would you give to young designers, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds who wants to make a difference to their work?
I would say try new things, get in there and figure out what speaks to you and go with that. A lot of times we can get distracted by what everyone else is doing, or if people, if people think this is a good idea, but it's when in your heart and you can build something and push it forward, keep going. Because there has been many ups and downs with trying to get this brand out. I remember when I first started in 2018, people were racism isn't a thing, right? Colorism doesn't exist. And then what happens 2020 when everybody changes their opinion, when COVID happens, when George Floyd happens. But I would say trust yourself and your intuition, and also understand why you're doing it. Are you doing it just so you can be famous, or are you doing it to send a message to the world? I never dreamed of being, or thought I would be a fashion designer after I started school for chemistry. Mm-hmm. It just called me back. And it's kind of crazy how it happens, and how I was able to merge the two worlds. But when I had something to say, this is what I built as a avenue to say it, but also understanding the needs of my communities and what we want, what we are interested in having, and something that just didn't exist, right? I know, what is it? I can imagine what it would feel like for a Black girl, a Black woman, to finally walk into a store to buy a luxury good purse or anything and just be treated like, hey, this was all here for you. We don't get to have those experiences, even though we shop with these clients. That's not always the experience that we get, So what does it look like to have somebody design product, create experiences, tell stories about who you are, and honor the very science of who you are through a brand? And that's what I'm trying to build on. So I would tell designers, how can you integrate a piece of who you are into what you're creating? But also, how do you differentiate yourself in your storytelling, in your messaging, in your designs? Because that's important. The important thing is your unique perspective, and you have to be able to lean into that.
Embrace your uniqueness. What's your legacy? What do you want people to remember you for?
You know what? I feel like, if I'm being honest, I haven't fully thought about that. But I will say, what I hope the legacy of EUMELANIN is that I am building something that exists after I'm gone, right? When I think about some of those luxury brands, like the people who designed or started to create the brand are no longer around. But if I have come into this with the intention that I'm okay going slow, and I'm okay going slow because I want EUMELANIN to exist when I'm no longer here. And so it's not as much as a legacy for me, but as a legacy I would like for the brand to continue producing items and products and experiences that celebrates, honors, and tell our stories. Like, that's what my hope is for this brand. And that's why I created it. That's why it's not named after me, right? It's named after us, right?
Yes.
For us.
Yeah.
So, I was very intentional about that. Like,
yeah,
hopefully one day I can go into the background and it's be like, EUMELANIN is what commands all the attention. So that's my hope. That's my wish for the brand.
I'm loving everything you shared today, Deirdre. Your journey from chemist to change maker in fashion is not just inspiring, but it's revolutionary. I want to thank you for sharing your powerful story and for showing us how fashion can be a profound agent of change and celebrating not only diversity, but Black women. But because if there's a demography that's always in the back, it's I think it's the black women, and I'm loving that you're celebrating them and you putting them in the forefront. To our listener, I want to thank you for tuning in today's episode of the Woman Up Podcast. Remember, every step you take can be a bold move towards creating a more inclusive and beautiful world. Keep making those moves and keep tuning in for more stories. Incredible women like Deirdre are lighting the way. Until next time, keep striving and thriving. Woman Up.